of May. We're feeling the spring vibes, at least here in Austin, Texas. And what better way to kick off May than to have Jessica Chen? I've been vibing off of this lady boss on LinkedIn, checking out her content and what she's up to. And she just speaks my language because I believe so strongly in communication and that executive presence. It's part of my success. So you have so much to teach. And I know we don't have that much time to educate, but that's what we're going to focus on today. She's an Emmy Award winner. She has a book coming out, which we have to talk about, picked up by Penguin, which is no easy feat. So she'll speak to her praises. But Jessica, thank you so much for being here today. If you're watching, let us know where you're watching from. Say hello, get those questions in as well. Jessica, first things first, tell us a little bit about your journey to being the person you are today.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Rachel, for having me. It's always such an honor to be on these platforms and to engage with you and the audience. So, a little bit about me. I used to be a former television journalist, which is where that Emmy came from. So my career, it started in news. I was at ABC, NBC. I was in New York for a few years working for New York One. My last stop was at ABC in San Diego, which was where I won that Emmy Award. And it's funny because when I won that award, a lot of people are like, congratulations, is there going to be more? What's next? But I actually took that as a sign of saying, you know what? There's actually so much that I learned on TV that I can actually teach folks this, because every day as a journalist, you're presenting, public speaking, you're interviewing people, interpersonal communications, navigating tricky conversations. You're dealing with people and you're having this, honestly, tough conversations. And I was like, wait a second, we can actually teach this to professionals. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I decided to start my own company, Soulcast Media, and the impact we've made is amazing. We've taught over 2 million people how to become better communicators.
2 million. Now, some of that is because you're one of the top LinkedIn and learning instructors. You have how many courses?
I have 10 courses right now with the LinkedIn Learning team. But honestly, I mean, I feel so lucky, but there's been tons of other instructors who have even more courses. But I'm so proud though, because the courses that I do have on LinkedIn, they've done extremely well, probably because a lot of it is communication space. But my whole philosophy is, I understand the struggle with communications and how people feel like they don't have that confidence to speak up. They don't know how to advocate for themselves, right? And so oftentimes when I teach, I'm really coming from a place of empathy, because I used to be that person. I used to be that quiet person who never spoke up in meetings. So I understand.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about that a little bit. So you said you realized that people needed help with this. Where did it start? That like biggest pain point that you have the most questions from, most people struggle with that you're finding?
So it's really two camps, to tell you the truth. There are folks who come to me because they're just like, help me become a better public speaker. I have to do a presentation. I mean, many of us have to do presentations from time to time, and I just don't like the way I present. I'm so nervous. How do I manage that? The other camp are those who really just struggle with being visible, speaking up in meetings, not contributing in meetings. And it's not because they don't have anything to say, they have great things to say, but maybe because they don't feel like their voice matters, or they're constantly talked over, right? And as a woman, as a minority, like, and I feel that, I remember walking into meetings and sometimes feeling, do people care? But that's the thing. It's, you have to be your own best advocate. So those are kind of like the two folks that I usually work with. But ultimately, I kind of teach the same thing. It's just like building and finding that confidence, which I know we can't talk about in just 30 minutes. There's like so much we can talk about. But here's the thing, it can be learned and it can be improved. That's the beauty of it.
It can be learned. You hear that, y'all. So what do they say? Public speaking is feared more than death.
That's what they say. Yes. And I mean,
whatever they is.
yeah. I believe it. It is scary because, suddenly your colleagues, people who maybe you're comfortable with, because you're standing in front of them, suddenly they're just so intimidating to you now, right? And you don't see them as Jen or Bob or Joe or whatever. You see them as director, manager, CEO. But here's the thing, I always say, you got to humanize the experience. Remember, they're just people too. Don't think of them and their fancy titles. Just talk to them as if you're just having a conversation.
Ooh, I love that. I mean, that's what we believe at Stand Out Authority, all around humanizing our marketing, our conversations. So, what is I'm one of those people that I don't struggle. Like I've never struggled with the presenting piece. I like being on stage. I get energized. Not that I don't get nervous, and I think that that's kind of a misconception is like you're confident. Like if you see somebody confident, oh, they're not nervous or whatever. And it's like, well, I'm confident in what I'm communicating. So therefore I'm comfortable presenting. I know that doesn't come from most people though, Jessica. And
Yeah.
I know teaching confidence is hard. Where do you start when you're thinking about, I got that presentation next week, I'm freaking out. If I don't do well in this, I might get laid off. Like, I don't know, right? What do you do to start building that confidence?
It's funny that you say the word confidence because confidence, just that word and what it means, it's not something that you can just tell people to be. Just be confident.
No,
Okay, right? Like, if
no,
we could just bottle it up and, like, put it, in like, a little form and just give it to you, like, "Here, be confident," right? But it's not like that, right?
no.
And so, what I've realized, though, instead, what we actually need to talk about are actually techniques to help you build confidence, not suddenly become confident. And as you're building that, then you are suddenly more confident. So, for example, what do I mean? In a lot of the work that I do, I talk about, okay, how do you craft a presentation that is engaging? How do you use your tone of voice so it sounds interesting? How do you use your body language when you're talking so people look at you and they think, wow, you seem confident, right? But these are like techniques that people never think too much about. They just go, I have a presentation, I got to get it done. And they're doing it the day before, right? But these are all things that we need to practice because if you do that, it's gonna seem funny, but, getting up, practicing, and saying it out loud, that will help you feel better, and your speaking will be a lot more smooth.
Hmm. Is there anything, because you were on TV, I mean, you've had to be in situations that could be a little nerve-wracking. Are there any, for instance, Amy Eliza Wong, who's a communication coach, she's a previous client, she's like, when we're doing things, she said, put on your heels, especially when you're virtual, and presenting to groups, it's like you're not feeling the audience.
Yeah.
So stand up when you're presenting and put on your heels. And so now I've started to do that. I make sure, like, when we're doing things, I raise the desk, I only stand, and I put on my heels for myself.
I love that. You know what? If that works and that gives you that boost, go for it. I remember early on when all of us kind of were in that lockdown mode, now it's been a few years. I remember I had a conversation once with somebody and I was like, still get ready in the morning because it's easy just to like kind of jump on a call in your PJs and just roll out of bed. But I was like, get ready, put on that perfume if it makes you feel good. No one else can smell it, but you can, right? So it's like, do what makes you feel good.
So what do you do? I'm curious. I want to know.
It's funny because for me, and I don't think I've ever admitted this before, but if it was up to me, I'm actually kind of like more of like the relaxed, laid back kind of person that I would be okay kind of like, dressing more down, especially
Really?
because like, yeah, especially if we're like working from home. But if I do have like something like a presentation that I'm actually very excited about, you kind of have to be your own hype person too, right? You're like, okay, this is going to be good. This is going to be great. So yeah, I will do the whole thing of like putting on makeup, doing my hair. I think because in news we've always had to do hair and makeup. That was always like a huge production that now that I'm not on TV, I enjoy that more like laid back kind of like vibe. But hey, if you need me to like glam up, I can do that too.
Yeah.
So
Ready to go. Ready to
yeah.
go. I mean, I'm definitely like for me when I have the makeup on and I that for me gives me that extra confidence
Yeah.
boost. But I do hear you. I mean, everyone kind of has their everyone's got their own thing.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Like I
Mm.
said, my whole thing, like, I actually did the whole perfume stuff, like, just spritz a little bit before just to, like before I walked into my own home office, right? Just to make me feel like, "Okay, it's a new day," right, kinda thing. But yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So, what's your most viewed course? Like what's the one that people just keep gravitating towards?
So, my number one course on LinkedIn Learning is a course called Developing Executive Presence on
Mm.
Video Calls.
Ooh.
And yeah, specifically on video calls. And it's funny because this is a funny story. I signed with LinkedIn Learning to do that course maybe 2019. And so it came out 2019 before the pandemic, and I feel like there probably weren't that many people watching it, but then suddenly, because everybody was working from home and you get all these crazy camera angles, nobody knows how to show up on video, that course just, like, skyrocketed. So that has been viewed over 1,000,000 times, and I would say my second most popular course is my Speaking Up at Work, that course.
Ooh, okay. So let's talk about this. What are your tips for being, your executive presence? It's such a big one. Oh my God. Like I can see why executive presence while you're remote. What is the main thing people are doing wrong and they need to do right?
Let me start by saying, even if you or your team are back in the office, chances are you may still be jumping on video calls externally or maybe internally. So it's not that because many of us are maybe back in the office or hybrid that video calls don't matter. In fact, I think a lot of people are using them more than ever before still. So executive presence still matters. So here are just kind of my quick and dirty tips. How you set up your camera, I mean, Rachel, you're great. I mean, I think your executive presence on video looks fantastic because part of it is how you set up. Are
Yeah.
you framed well? I mean, how many of us have been on those calls where a senior executive's camera is so close to their face, or they're just kind of like a little like person on the bottom, like their camera angle is just so off. Another thing is lighting. I mean, lighting is so important. You sometimes get folks who have the dark silhouette because of windows behind them. I mean, just turn on a little lamp or put it on your desk,
Yeah.
right? um where and how your camera's positioned. So for example, I'm on a laptop right now, just kind of like tilting it just slightly, right? It can make a huge difference because you don't want like all this, I call it the floating head. You don't want that floating head. Subtle things like this can make a huge difference in how you're framed. That's part of executive presence.
Yeah. So what you're really talking about is not the verbal communication. You're talking about the nonverbals.
Well, in this course I talk about both, but that's like my quick and dirty tip for like
Right, right, right. In this
yeah.
example, which I don't think anybody actually thinks about this part. You know what I mean? They're more because I know this because I'm the branding person. And so I'm always talking about it's not just what you say, it's all of it, right? It's all sensory pieces that people experience you because they're making impressions about you in 2 seconds. So, right. So if you're talking with an executive, they've already have some feeling about you. If you look like you rolled out of bed or
Yeah.
the lights, they already have some thought on how much you care before you even open your mouth, even how smart you are, how prepared you're saying. So I think it's a really important point to hit.
Yeah, impressions matter. And I'll say, I'll dive a little bit deeper about executive presence. So, yes, one is how you carry yourself. So, how you carry yourself on video, how do you show up on video? The second pillar, so there's actually three pillars. The first one is how you carry yourself. The second one is your communications ability. That is part of executive presence. How can you have executive presence if you cannot command a meeting? How can you have executive presence if you are littered with filler words? So that's second one, communications. The third one is it's how you make other people feel. When
Mhm.
people are engaging with you, do they feel that you have that social self-awareness? Are you able to have emotional intelligence, right? Are you able to have that gravitas, be decisive? So these are, we call it in the communications world as having the triple package. So that's a little bit more detail about it.
Ooh, like there's so much meat under each of those. And what I find so interesting about communication in this topic is that it's also subjective and culture very culturally driven. I think you did a recent post even just comparing Germany to another country, right? So there's that geographical, but even just looking at a tech company
Mhm.
versus the finance company versus the law company, and what that presence means is so different. So you really do have to be aware of where you're at and who you are. It's not easy.
It's not easy. And actually, I will say one of my other courses on LinkedIn is cross-cultural communications.
Mhm.
And it's just having that cultural awareness of different people who come from different countries, they're different ethnicities. Their thinking process, the way they operate, the way they process things is just completely different. It's not right or wrong, right? It's just you have to acknowledge it. And I feel like we have all these conversations about being inclusive, but we never think about, okay, from a culture perspective, are we acknowledging kind of like, for example, growing up Asian American, I was taught a set of principles of how to carry myself. And that was actually kind of different from the Western ideal, right? But
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. You kind of have to have that awareness and know how to be flexible between the two. That's really how we can all succeed.
It's big. It's huge. And I will say, I think that the newer generation, and Jessica, um, Gen Z and below, they're struggling with this because I talk to my friends and above who are the managers, and because they've now come into the world in a remote work world,
Mm,
doing school more remote, like they're not necessarily used to the different ways of communicating, in person, and just like those cues.
yeah.
And we're all on our phones and all of it, but they're, to your point of like, you have to be human and like kind of pick up on some stuff. I think it's harder. I think it's so much harder now.
It's so much harder. And actually, it's funny that you mentioned students because so one of the very exciting things that we had announced last year was so we are actually, it's a university in Texas that we partnered with to teach their students, first generation students, how to become better communicators, but from a career perspective.
Mm.
Um, and I actually just had my lesson with them this morning, and we were talking, our topic of the month was advocating for yourself. And so if you imagine, I'm teaching, I think there are probably like 19, 20-year olds. I'm teaching 19, 20-year olds how they can better advocate for themselves in the internships that they're at once they enter the real world. And I feel so happy doing this. And I'm honestly, kudos to that organization, the university, for having the foresight to be like, we have to train these students because many of us learn this when we're already on the job and we're just like, oh God, right? So,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. I support the University of Texas, Austin. So with the students, and I am hearing that pain point that you're talking about a lot. It's not that they're, not that they're smart or capable or anything. It's the communication.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the presence. It's how do I write an email? How do
Exactly.
I network and just get on a call with somebody I have no idea with, and have a conversation, but also, show who I am, how I carry myself. So I'm so glad that you're doing that. That's great.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I want to hear about the book.
Oh my gosh. This is so exciting and I feel so honored. So I'll tell you the backstory. I've been writing this book for the last 3 years, and I was actually gonna go kind of like the DIY route, just kinda do it myself. I had an idea, I have thoughts, and I was like, "I'm just gonna, like, put pen to paper." It took a long time, and it's funny because I tell folks, I got married, I had a baby, and all that stuff, and this book is still here. So all these, like, life events have happened, but this book is still here. So it's funny because Earlier this year, I finally finished the manuscript, and I was thinking, "Okay, let's get this out there." And then somebody suggested that I actually share it with, like, the big 5 publishing houses, and in my head, I was like, "Are you serious? Like, you think they would be interested?" And they were like, "Oh, yeah, like, this is a" the book, and I'll tell you the book, what that is, but they're like, "This is a great book, I think it could resonate with a lot of people." And I was like, "Okay, I mean, might as well try, right?"
Yeah.
So, I got an agent, fantastic agent, and she basically introduced me to and pitched the book idea, and at the end of it, I decided to go with Penguin Random House, and they wanted to work with me, and I'm working with the team portfolio, and they worked on Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, Pepsi's former CEO, her book. So the fact that I'm working with this team to help my book and elevate my book and get it out there, I'm so beyond honored. So what is this book? So the book, the working title right now is called Quiet Capital. And it is a communications book, but it's teaching folks how to build that visibility, that influence in this loud world. And it's really geared towards folks who have perhaps felt overshadowed, overlooked, right? A lot of it's cultural too, and just kind of reframing how we show up. But I don't know. I'm pretty optimistic about this book when it comes out, which is going to come out in 2024, but I really think it can make a huge impact.
Oh my gosh. I love the idea of quiet capital. I think that's phenomenal.
Thank you.
And you are so deserving of this. I can't wait to pre-order and help you promote it. It's amazing. We need more female authors. We
Yes.
need the message out there. And it's a big deal, y'all, to get signed and get a book. It's a big deal to just write the book. And that's one of my goals, Jessica, just, writing a book. So it's on the vision board. So whenever I meet a writer who's done it, I always just am so inspired because it's a big deal to put your heart and soul into something.
Yeah.
And you want the validation. So you're getting that validation. Of course, you got a lot of work to do to get
Yeah.
it out there. This is where the fun begins, right?
Promoting, yes. But here, I'll tell you this, Rachel. I hope you write that book. And let me tell you, I never thought of myself as a writer. I was probably always like a B grade, like, student in my English class in high school. So honestly, I should go back to my high school and be like, hey, I wrote this book because I was always kind of just like average in English. So it's funny, but you know what? Anybody can do it really. So I hope you write that book too.
Thank you. I will. And I love what you're saying too. I think that's part of the overall message here. It's like any person can be confident. Any person can have communication skills and put yourself out there. But there's a process to learn and
Mhm.
to kind of get past the fears. I think that's a lot of the message that I'm hearing from you too.
Yeah.
And that word confidence, it is something that needs to be learned.
It's something that needs to be learned because, I'm pretty shy and introverted naturally. Sometimes I get some social anxiety when I'm around people I just don't know. So I understand, like, it's hard sometimes to put somebody in a situation where you're like, okay, speak up, communicate when it's just we just weren't born that way. I wasn't born that way. I don't consider myself that like charismatic, extroverted person who knows how to just socialize and work a room. I don't know how to do that. I never knew how to do that. But that's the thing about communications. You can learn to do all these things and you can do it in a way that feels authentic and natural so that when you do walk into that room, when you are talking to a senior executive, you kind of know how to like, work it a little bit. You know how to speak, you know how to connect with them. And that's really the art, right?
So it
Again,
is. Girl,
learn.
that's why my newsletter is called Work, WERK, Work Your Brand. And when I was clubhousing a lot, I had a session I would always do on Sundays, build your brand and work the shit out of it.
Love it.
That's it, especially, you have a big following, you've got a book deal, and, people keep saying, I need more visibility. I need more visibility. And it's like, this is what needs to be done. Kind of have to, you got to put yourself out there.
Yeah. these days there's so much resources out there. Anybody can really just go out and just do it, and you just got to start, right? And
Yeah.
I get it. There's tons of people who are like, I don't want to be like an entrepreneur or anything. I want to just kind of like just do my work. But even everything that we're talking about, you still got to get yourself out there. You still got to get your name out there. When people hear your name, what do they think, right? It's not just about doing the work. It's also what people see when they see you, right? And trust me, coming from a traditional, very conservative Eastern household, it was always just do the work, do it quietly. But that does not translate into visibility. You have to proactively find those opportunities.
Yeah, and do it all the time, because what I find with people is they're like, "Oh my god, I need the job. I haven't been doing anything. I haven't been networking. I haven't been on my LinkedIn profile. I don't remember the last time I was on it." And I was like, "Well, like it's something you do all the time.
Mhm.
Always building, always networking, because you don't know. You might not want to be an entrepreneur today, Jessica, but you might actually decide you want that in 5 years, and then you're gonna be like, dang, I should have been networking and
Yeah.
putting stuff out the last 5 years." So, okay.
I was gonna say the more years of work experience we have, it's very easy to see it's actually about who you know, the connections you have. Yes, the first early years, it's really about just kind of like working hard, but once you kind of reach a certain level, and honestly, I would say it's like, I mean, honestly, I really do feel it starts from the beginning. But if we're talking about, okay, when do you start focusing on visibility? I mean, once you start working a few years, that should be your priority. Be visible.
Yes, I couldn't agree more, Jessica. As we close out, where can people follow you, get in touch? What do you have going on? Tell
Yes.
us.
So there's so many different resources. So first of all, follow me on LinkedIn. If you don't already follow me, I'm posting tons of communications content every week. And these are content that I'm just basically teaching people how to become better communicators at work. So follow me on LinkedIn, Jessica Chen page. I'm also on Instagram. I'm trying to be more diligent about Instagram, to tell you the truth, because it's just another way for me to continuously talk about communications. Otherwise, find me on our website, soulcastmedia.com, and get on our email list too, because we're also delivering weekly communication tips. So soulcastmedia.com/tips. That's the site.
Perfect. And it's on your profile. So, best place to start on LinkedIn profile, but this is being streamed on other places. So, Soulcast Media. You're amazing. I can't wait for this book. Can't wait to just support you in getting that message out there. So many people need to follow you and take in what you're talking about. Thank you for being with me today.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel. It's great chatting with you, and I look forward to connecting with everybody.
Yes, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Write in some questions, we'll reply back. And I'll be back next month with another amazing guest. Have an incredible rest of your week.